Imagine being the housekeeper for a high-ranking Nazi officer while secretly hiding 12 Jewish refugees in the very basement where he sleeps. This was the terrifying daily reality for Irene Opdyke, a young Polish nurse whose courage redefined the limits of sacrifice. During the German occupation, Irene was forced to work for Major Éva Durrleman. Instead of merely obeying, she used her position to smuggle food and information to the local ghetto. But her most daring act began when she moved 12 Jewish friends into the Major's private villa, hiding them in the laundry room and a secret cellar. For months, she managed a double life right under the nose of the SS. When the Major finally discovered her secret, Irene faced an agonizing choice to prevent their execution. She agreed to become his mistress. She traded her own dignity for their lives. By the time the area was liberated, all 12 of her guests had survived. Irene Opdyke's story is a chilling true testament to the power of one person to act as a shield against overwhelming evil. Ask yourself, how far would you go to protect the innocent? Imagine being 16 years old, orphaned, and hiding 13 Jewish refugees in your attic, while 2 SS officers live in the room right next to you. This isn't a movie plot, it's the terrifying true story of Stefania and Helena Podgórska. In 1943, in Nazi-occupied Poland, helping a Jew meant an immediate death sentence for your entire family. Yet, Stefania and her 6-year-old sister, Helena, turned their small apartment into a secret fortress. They built a hidden space in the attic, providing a lifeline for 13 people escaping the liquidation of the Przemysl ghetto. The ultimate test came when the SS requisitioned their house. For 8 months, the sisters lived a double life. While Stefania served the officers downstairs, 13 people sat in absolute suffocating silence, just inches above their heads. One sneeze, one dropped object, or one cry from little Helena would have meant a mass execution. They survived. All 13 refugees lived to see the liberation because a teenager and a child refused to surrender their humanity. What would you risk to save a stranger? Let me know in the comments and follow for more stories of incredible courage. Imagine a small farmhouse in Poland, 1944. Józef and Wiktoria Ulma were ordinary farmers raising 6 children, with a 7th on the way. But they were hiding a secret that carried an automatic death sentence. 8 Jewish neighbors were living in their attic. In Nazi-occupied Poland, the law was absolute. Help a Jew, and you die. The Ulmas knew the risk, but they chose mercy over fear. For over a year, they shared their meager food and lives in total secrecy. Then came the betrayal. On the morning of March 24th, Nazi police stormed the farm. In a matter of minutes, the horror unfolded. They executed the 8 Jewish guests first. Then, they murdered Józef and Wiktoria, who was in her final stage of labor, in front of their children. Finally, they turned their guns on the 6 little ones, including the toddlers, to spare the town from having to feed them. The Ulmas were recently beatified by the church, the first time an entire family, including an unborn child, has been honored this way. They lost everything, but they saved the dignity of humanity. Is it possible to forgive the people who murdered your family? This was the ultimate question for Corrie ten Boom. In 1940s Holland, Corrie was a quiet watchmaker, but her home held a dangerous secret. Behind a false wall in her bedroom, a space no wider than 2 feet, her family hid hundreds of Jews and Dutch resistance fighters from the Gestapo. They called it the hiding place. In 1944, they were betrayed. The Nazis arrested the entire family. Corrie and her sister Betsy were sent to the notorious Ravensbrück concentration camp. Surrounded by starvation and brutality, they didn't just survive. They held secret Bible readings, bringing hope to a place designed to crush it. Betsy died in the camp, but Corrie was released due to a clerical error, just days before all women her age were sent to the gas chambers. But the real story began after the war. Corrie stood face to face with one of her former SS guards. He asked for her forgiveness. In that moment, she had to choose hate or grace. She reached out her hand and realized that forgiveness isn't an emotion. It's a choice that sets the prisoner free. Corrie saved over 800 lives, but her message of love is what truly changed the world. Could you forgive the unforgivable? In 1941, Jadwiga, a young Polish pharmacy student and resistance member, was sent to Ravensbrück, the notorious all-female concentration camp. There, she became one of the rabbits, the name given to women subjected to horrific medical experiments by Nazi doctors. They deliberately infected her leg with virulent bacteria like Staphylococcus and gangrene to test sulfonamide drugs. The goal? To see how much pain a human body could endure before rotting away. Jadwiga suffered through high fevers and agonizing operations, but she wasn't just a victim. Along with other rabbits, she secretly documented the experiments, hiding the evidence from the SS to ensure the world would one day know the truth. Against all odds, she survived. In 1946, she stood in a courtroom at the Nuremberg medical trial. She didn't just speak, she showed the judges her scarred, disfigured legs. Her testimony was the ultimate evidence that sent Nazi doctors to the gallows. What if your final act of defiance was a simple smile for a camera? Meet Lisette Moru, the French resistance fighter whose courage haunts the history books. In 1942, Lisette was a young secretary in Nazi-occupied France, secretly working for the resistance. She was captured by the Gestapo and sent to the infamous Auschwitz-Birkenau. But Lisette wasn't just another prisoner. When it came time for her forced identification photo, she did something unthinkable. She didn't look down in shame or fear. She looked directly into the lens and smiled. That smile wasn't a sign of joy. It was a weapon. It was a message to her captors that they could take her freedom, but they could never take her spirit. In a place designed to strip away every ounce of human dignity, Lisette's smile was a silent scream of resistance. Tragically, Lisette did not survive the camp. She died of exhaustion and disease in 1943. But her photo survived. Today, that image of a smiling girl in the middle of a death camp remains one of the most powerful symbols of defiance in human history. How many mothers can one woman have? For 11,000 children escaping the Holocaust, the answer was Henrietta Szold. In 1933, as the shadow of Nazi Germany began to fall over Europe, a 73-year-old woman from Baltimore stepped into the heart of the crisis. Henrietta Szold didn't just watch the news, she launched Youth Aliyah, a daring rescue mission to save Jewish children from certain death. While others hesitated, she negotiated with the Gestapo and organized secret transports across borders. She didn't just find them homes, she became their family. Henrietta personally met almost every ship that arrived in Palestine, waiting on the docks at all hours to greet traumatized children by name. She insisted on high-quality education and emotional care, famously saying, "Make my heart large enough to contain as many as shall be needed." Henrietta Szold never had children of her own, yet she is remembered as the Mother of Israel. She proved that age is no barrier to changing history, and that one person's organized compassion can defeat a regime's organized hate. The world is looking at this crime, more terrible than anything history has seen, and is staying silent. These are the words of Zofia Kossak-Szczucka, the woman who risked everything to break that silence. In 1942, Nazi-occupied Poland was a graveyard. Zofia was a devout Catholic and a well-known writer, but she became a revolutionary. She penned the famous Protest, a secret leaflet that shamed the world for ignoring the Holocaust. But she didn't just write, she acted. She co-founded Jagota, the only underground organization in occupied Europe specifically dedicated to saving Jews. Under the codename Weronika, she managed a massive network that provided thousands of forged documents, secret housing, and medical care. Even after being captured and sent to the death camp of Auschwitz, she never broke. She survived the typhus, the starvation, and the interrogations, only to return to the resistance the moment she was released. Zofia proved that you don't have to agree with someone's faith to die for their right to live. She was later honored as righteous among the nations for saving thousands of lives. What if a real-life princess gave up her palace to become a secret hero in the middle of the Holocaust? This is the extraordinary story of Princess Alice of Battenberg, the mother of Prince Philip. Born deaf but fluent in multiple languages, Alice's life was marked by tragedy and exile. By the time the Nazis occupied Athens in 1943, she was living alone in a modest apartment. While the Gestapo hunted for the last remaining Jews in the city, Alice didn't hide behind her royal title. She hid a family. For over a year, she sheltered Rachel Cohen and her children in her home, just meters away from Nazi headquarters. When the Gestapo grew suspicious and came to interrogate her, Alice used her deafness to her advantage. She pretended not to understand their questions, frustrating the officers until they finally gave up and left. She was a princess by birth, but a rebel by choice, spending her days wearing a nun's habit and distributing soup to the starving while the city burned around her. After the war, she founded an order of nursing nuns and died with almost no possessions, having given everything she owned to the poor. She was later honored as righteous among the nations, the highest honor Israel bestows on non-Jews. Hitler called her the most dangerous woman in the Italian royal family. This is the tragic hidden story of Princess Mafalda of Savoy. The daughter of the Italian king, Mafalda was a princess by blood, but a target by choice. Hitler and Goebbels despised her, believing she was the mastermind behind Italy's decision to defect from the Axis powers. In 1943, the Nazis set a trap. They told her there was an urgent phone call from her husband in Bulgaria, but it was a lie. As soon as she stepped into the German embassy in Rome, she was kidnapped by the Gestapo. She wasn't sent to a palace, she was sent to the Buchenwald concentration camp. Under the alias Frau von Weber, the princess was thrown into a shack next to an ammunition factory. She shared the same starvation, the same cold, and the same fear as every other prisoner. In August 1944, Allied planes bombed the factory. Mafalda was buried under the rubble, suffering horrific burns and a crushed arm. Because she was a special prisoner, the Nazis delayed her medical care for days. When they finally operated, they did it so poorly that she bled to death. Her final words to her fellow inmates were, "Remember me not as a princess, but as your Italian sister." In 1940s occupied France, Éva was a devout deaconess and a nurse. But her hospital in Saint-Germain-en-Laye was more than a place of healing. It was a secret hub for the French resistance. While the Nazis walked the hallways, Éva and her fellow sisters were busy hiding downed Allied pilots, Jewish refugees, and resistance fighters right under the enemy's nose. She didn't just hide people, she operated a sophisticated escape network. Éva forged identity papers, smuggled intelligence, and coordinated the Underground Railroad to safety. In 1943, the trap finally closed. The Gestapo arrested her, subjected her to brutal interrogations, and deported her to the hell of Ravensbrück concentration camp. Even behind the barbed wire, Éva remained a nurse to the soul. She used her medical knowledge to save lives and her faith to prevent women from falling into despair. She survived the camp's liberation in 1945, returning to France not as a victim, but as a hero who had looked at the ultimate evil and refused to blink. In 1940, a young American journalist stepped off a train in Marseille with $3,000 taped to his leg and a list of 200 names. His name was Varian Fry, and he was about to become the American Schindler. While the world watched France fall to the Nazis, Fry was sent on a desperate, secret mission to save Europe's greatest intellectuals and artists from the Gestapo. He had no background in espionage, yet he stayed for 13 months, running an underground rescue network right under the noses of the Vichy police. Fry didn't just save the 200 people on his list. He saved over 2,000, including legends like Marc Chagall, Max Ernst, and Hannah Arendt. He forged passports, hired mountain guides for illegal escapes, and openly defied his own government's orders to return home. When he was finally expelled from France, he was largely ignored by the US State Department for decades. What if you had to smuggle a crying baby past armed guards in a toolbox or a sack? This wasn't a movie for Irene Sendler, it was her daily reality in occupied Poland. As a social worker with a permit to enter the Warsaw Ghetto, Sendler led a secret network that rescued approximately 2,500 Jewish children from certain death. She used every desperate method imaginable, smuggling them out in ambulances, through sewers, and even hidden in suitcases. But she did something even more remarkable. She wanted every child to one day find their true identity. She wrote their real names on scraps of paper, sealed them in glass jars, and buried them under an apple tree in her friend's garden. Even when the Gestapo eventually arrested and tortured her, breaking her feet and legs, she never surrendered a single name. After the war, she dug up those jars to reunite families. Irene Sendler proved that one person's courage can outshine the darkest evil. If these children need me in days of sunshine, how much more do they need me in days of darkness? These were the defiant words of Jane Haining, a Scottish matron who chose a death sentence over abandoning her students. In 1932, Jane moved from a quiet life in Scotland to Budapest to run a school for Jewish and Christian girls. When World War II broke out and the Nazis eventually occupied Hungary, her church repeatedly ordered her to return to the safety of Scotland. She flatly refused, choosing to stay as a protector for the dozens of Jewish children in her care. In April 1944, the Gestapo arrived at her door. She was arrested on 8 charges, including working among Jews and weeping when seeing the girls wear yellow stars. Jane was deported to Auschwitz, where she became one of the few British citizens to perish in the camp. She had every opportunity to escape, but she remained a beacon of love until the very end. It makes you wonder, in a world of darkness, would you have the courage to stay and be the light? Meet Dita Kraus, a 14-year-old girl who became the secret librarian of the most dangerous library on Earth, Block 31 in Auschwitz-Birkenau. Her collection consisted of only 8 tattered, smuggled books, including a geography text and a work by H.G. Wells. To the children in the family camp, these books were the only gateway to a world beyond the barbed wire. Dita's job was to protect these treasures at all costs, hiding them under her dress during terrifying SS inspections or stashing them in secret holes beneath the floorboards. She worked under the brave leader Friedrich Hirsch, helping run a forbidden school under the very noses of the guards. If she had been caught with even a single page, she would have faced immediate execution. Yet, she chose to risk everything because she believed that stories were a shield against the darkness. Dita survived the horrors of Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen to share her testimony with the world today. Imagine being the niece of Gustav Mahler and a violin virtuoso who performed in the greatest concert halls of Europe, only to find yourself conducting for your life in the shadow of the gas chambers. This was the haunting reality of Alma Rosé. When she arrived at Auschwitz-Birkenau in 1943, she was given a terrifying mission: to lead the women's orchestra. To the SS, the music was a cruel entertainment. To Alma, it was a weapon of survival. She was a relentless perfectionist, demanding professional standards from a group of terrified young women, many of whom were barely musicians. But there was a desperate method to her intensity. As long as the orchestra sounded flawless, its members remained essential and escaped the selections. Alma transformed a ragtag group into a disciplined ensemble that played marches as prisoners went to work and concerts for their executioners. Alma Rosé died in the camp in April 1944, likely from sudden illness or food poisoning, but because of her uncompromising discipline, almost every single member of her orchestra survived the war. What would you do if your comfortable life was safe, but your conscience told you to step directly into a war zone? In 1939, Martha Sharp, a social worker from Massachusetts, did exactly that. She left her own children behind to travel into the heart of Nazi-occupied Prague on a mission of mercy. Working for the Unitarian Service Committee, Martha operated in the shadows, constantly evading the Gestapo to arrange secret escapes for political refugees and Jewish families. When the Nazis invaded France, she moved her operations to the south, trekking across the Pyrenees Mountains to smuggle children and intellectuals to safety in Lisbon. She navigated a maze of bureaucracy, forged documents, and dangerous border crossings, often risking immediate arrest or execution. Martha didn't just provide aid, she provided a path to freedom for hundreds who had been marked for death. Because of her extraordinary courage, she became one of the few Americans ever honored as righteous among the nations by Yad Vashem. Can a quiet convent in the heart of France become a secret fortress for the hunted? Meet Élise Rivet, a Catholic nun known as Mother Marie Elisabeth, who turned her life of prayer into a daring mission of resistance. During the Nazi occupation of Lyon, she transformed her convent into a sanctuary, hiding hundreds of Jewish children and resistance fighters from the Gestapo. She wasn't just a witness, she was a participant in the combat resistance movement, smuggling refugees across borders. But in 1944, the Gestapo finally came for her. Élise was arrested and deported to the brutal Ravensbrück concentration camp. Even in that hellscape, her spirit remained unbroken. On Good Friday, 1945, just weeks before liberation, she performed the ultimate act of sacrifice. When a mother was selected for the gas chamber, Élise stepped forward and volunteered to take her place. She died so that another could live to see her children again. What if the only thing standing between a child and a death camp was your silence and a heavy wooden door? For Augustine Le May, the Mother Superior of a convent in Angers, France, the holy walls of Saint-Charles weren't just a place of prayer. They became a secret bunker for the innocent. During the darkest days of the Nazi occupation, Augustine turned her convent into a sanctuary, hiding Jewish children and families who were being hunted by the Gestapo. She provided them with false identities, integrated them into the school, and risked the lives of her entire community to protect them. She knew the risk was total, yet she never turned anyone away. In early 1944, the Gestapo finally discovered her secret and arrested her. Augustine was deported to the notorious Ravensbrück concentration camp, known as the Hell for Women. She endured starvation, freezing cold, and brutal labor, yet her spirit remained as unshakable as the walls of her convent. Remarkably, Augustine survived the horrors of the camp and returned to France after the war, where she was later honored as righteous among the nations by Yad Vashem. Could you keep a secret if the price was your life and the reward was a single moment of defiance? This was the daily reality for Alla Gertner, a young Polish woman who became one of the most daring saboteurs in the history of Auschwitz. After surviving the Benzin ghetto and forced labor camps, Alla was sent to Auschwitz-Birkenau, where she was assigned to work in the Union Werke munitions factory. Forced to produce weapons for her captors, she decided to turn the tools of death against the Nazis themselves. Risking immediate execution every single day, Alla and a small group of women began smuggling tiny amounts of gunpowder out of the factory, hidden in scraps of cloth or even under their fingernails. They passed the powder to the Sonderkommando underground. On October 7, 1944, that stolen powder was used to blow up Crematorium 4, marking the only successful armed revolt in the camp's history. When the Gestapo traced the explosives back to the factory, Alla was arrested and subjected to weeks of brutal torture. She never betrayed the resistance. On January 5, 1945, just 22 days before the camp was liberated, she was publicly hanged in front of her fellow prisoners.